Much of my work life has been sharing poetry with children in public schools and men in maximum security prisons. And I'm going to begin with a poem that speaks to some of the ways this work has shaped my life. Count's cleared, and the guard says, "It's late. Class is over. You can go back to your cells. Good night." This is the moment. Fault line. Slide of 2 plates. Some shift I can feel, but not yet quite see. This is the moment. Dark, screen descending. This is the moment. Cleave of an axe. What came before, and now this. Before, in that basement, buried room, 2 flights down. We're blind, but we touch something whole. Call it poems, call it life, call it we breathe and we're human. Now, their way to the right, the mural, barbed wire, North Block, death row, their walk in that dark I can't see beyond. And my turn to the left, past Four-Post, the garden, 3 chapels, 3 gates, outside to the car, where I sit frantic, desperate, driven by light, bridge lights, and town lights, and stop lights, and shop lights, and the light of the lamp I've left on at home. So much light, and still I can't see. Can't catch sight of a shape I might understand. All I see are the stairs of a fortress, where light, cut by grating, hits concrete in squares. All I see is where we throw what we don't want to look at, under low ceilings, way out in the bay. So much of who I am is because of the work I've done and what I've learned from my students and what I've seen of their world, which is often institutions that we citizens are paying for. Although I've felt lots of anger, sadness, pain, and although I do what I can to write about and oppose the inequity that I see at the core of my students' lives, I think of these forces as they've shaped my own heart, mind, and soul as gifts. And I want to speak to one particular of this gift that I think is relevant to our conversation here about the theme of women writing about change. The work I've done, what I've seen, the human beings who were my students, have compelled me to speak up and speak out. This speaking didn't come very easily because I'm really quite shy, but I could summon what was needed because, I told myself, I was doing it for my students. I haven't felt equally strong, equally able to summon when I was doing the summoning for myself. I have been much more easily able to push, to let others know about my students' writing than about my own. In the first memoir that I wrote that was mentioned, disguised as a poem, My Years Teaching Poetry at San Quentin, I wrote an entire draft of the book before I even put myself in it at all. I thought I should just be like, being true to the situation was just, describing. And it took me that long to be able to see that the only story that I had the ability or the right to tell was my own. And the process of that discovery was at Hedgebrook. I wrote that book, almost all of it, at Hedgebrook. And there is almost no way to describe the gift of Hedgebrook and being in a cabin, being able to just go as deep as you need to, knowing that there are other women around doing the same, knowing that you're going to have dinner together in that gorgeous environment. You just can't overemphasize the encouragement and safety for being able to go deep that Hedgebrook gives. In one section of Disguised, I talk about the poems that I wrote when I was teaching at Quentin. And it was a sequence that the poem that I began with was part of. Some of my students felt that I didn't have a right to write those poems, that I didn't have a right to write about prison, which wasn't my world and which was their world. On the other hand, there was another artist teaching there, Linnell, who taught visual art, and she kept insisting to me that it was the artist's job, obligation, task to write about what we witnessed. And I felt both of those points of view were accurate, had truth, and I still feel that. A few years ago, one of my former students from Clinton, Spoon Jackson, who's serving life without possibility parole, so he's still in prison after 33 years. And he's, of all my students in my life, the one who really found himself through writing. He discovered what he didn't know was there and has become a very widely published writer. So he wrote me suggesting that he and I write a two-person memoir. And after a lot of consideration and back and forth, we did do that. And that book, By Heart, Poetry, Prison, and True Lives, came out 2 years ago, and it's the book that's outside there. So when the book came out, I watched myself work really hard to be sure that Spoon's chapters had a presence in readings and in interviews, and a bit less hard on behalf of my own writing. That makes sense to me. He was behind bars, he had no access, it was going to depend on me. And yet, that seems a human response to a paradoxical reality, and it also seems a woman's concern. How to be sure that the attention goes to others, in this case my students, instead of to me. So I look forward to the conversations that we're going to be having around this and these other themes. Thank you.